Hello all, welcome to the April 13th, 2022 Finance Committee meeting. As you can see, we are all on Zoom. So I'm going to read the remote meeting procedures preamble before we get kicked off. So in keeping with an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, as amended by Governor Baker on February 12th, 2022, this meeting will be conducted remotely over Zoom. Attendance by board/committee members will be remote, and remote attendance shall count towards quorum. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded on ECAT. There's Wendy. All right, so with that, let's jump down the list and make sure we have a roll call vote so that we are officially in session. Wendy did not get promoted for some reason. Let me promote her again. There we go. All right, so I'm just gonna go down the list. Last name, present is more than enough, and that'll kick us off. DiNapoli.
DiNapoli present.
DiNardo.
DiNardo is present.
Diaz.
Diaz present.
DePietro will come back to when he joins in 3 minutes. Jenkins.
Jenkins present.
Vamosi. Did we lose Tim? Tim might have dropped back off. And then I am present, which gives us quorum anyway. So we'll see if Tim is able to rejoin, but that is good enough for now. All right, with that, essentially the plan we have before us tonight is we have 2 items really to dive through, right? Which is warrant articles with a variety of the different guest stars you see here before you, and then 2 meeting minute certifications. The meeting minute piece, just to put a final note on it after Tim asked, we did have, Stacy went back through and made sure and was doing a double check on all the different meeting minutes to see which had been posted and which hadn't. And so we went back through and we made sure that if something hadn't made it to the final website, we're going to revote to accept it again, just in case. If we're duplicating efforts, oh well, right? Not the end of the world. Makes it double checked, double voted. So be it, but at least it's in there, and we know that everyone can go back there and find the thrilling meeting minutes of our stunning conversations as we have them here. So that's that for meeting minutes. But for warrant articles, I went through and I wanted to make sure that I had a good snapshot of exactly what was going on with them today. So just to give you guys a quick rundown, we have 34 articles. We do not want to be here till midnight, so we're not going to obviously do all of them. The benefit we have is that they're broken up into 3 categories, right? Generally 1 through 12 are sort of the general business ones. So I assume that if there's any questions, anything that we need to get additional detail on, Michael and Wendy are here to help with those. We will probably not be voting on. Michael, keep me honest. I mean, 4, 5, 7, and 8, I do not think are fully finalized. I did see the budget memos and stuff that came out from Connor. Wendy, you can keep me honest too. Some of those are, well, Kelly's here. Let me promote Kelly. Some of those are not fully finalized. Budgets are not fully balanced. So at the end of the day, some of those might not, we don't have final numbers. We're not going to vote on them. 13 through 24 are all community preservation ones, which our friend, Mr. Broussard, former FinCom genius, is here to help us with. I'm assuming there's no vote on 20, 21, and 22 because they're currently placeholders. And then Greg gets the gold star. 25 through 34 are all zoning, and they voted on all of them. So I assume we can too. So we'll probably be flying through those. So the goal tonight, we should have theoretically 26 or 27 to vote on of those 34. I speak very fast, as all of you can easily know. So I will read through them. We'll touch on the ones that obviously have a little bit more of a detail or have questions that we need to dig into, and we'll go forward from there. Before we get started, any questions, anything like that? I know that Mr. DiNardo has one thing he'd like to share with everyone before we get rolling, and I'll give the floor to him. But if there are any questions beforehand, just show of hands, nothing, maybe, no. Tim, go ahead.
Just for the record, but mostly present. Sorry about the technological error.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's fine. I will mark you down. There you go.
Yeah, I do need to mark
I'm
Kelly
here too, but I don't have a technical excuse. I'm just me.
Kelly and DePietro are both here. We kicked off. We know you're here, but I appreciate the call up. Brian, all yours.
Thank you, Patrick. I just wanted to take a moment to congratulate the Oliver Ames girls basketball team on their tremendous season and culminating in their state title in March. It's important to me to celebrate these types of moments, especially at this forum. So just wanted to take that opportunity to let them know that we are proud of their accomplishment and hope that they have a repeat performance in the 22-23 season. So just kudos to the OA girls basketball team for representing us very well.
I think if we voted on it, we'd be unanimous. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you for the floor.
Hell yeah. If there's any other incredible, physical feats that anyone in town has done, feel free to bring them to the finance. We're willing to, we'll give you a minute, go for it. All right, let's start going so we can get you guys out of here. So essentially, as those of you that are familiar, we're going to read through them relatively quickly. These are publicly available, so I don't have to read every single tiny word on them, but I'm gonna essentially summarize. The summaries that are on there are relatively good at that. Go through them. Like I said, 1 through 12, Michael and Wendy are here. We can then kick them out, and then we'll jump into community and we'll jump into zoning. Or actually, you guys can stick around if you want. I mean, it's a fun crew, right? Hang out, what the hell? All right, Article 1, acceptance of annual reports to see if the town will vote to accept the reports of the select board, town administrator, assessors, board of health, town clerk, treasurer, collector of taxes, school committee, town accountant, director of public works, and other departments, boards, and committees of the town, or take any other action relative thereto. This is an annual vote to accept the town report. Michael, the only question I have, I saw that the select board recommended it. This is just pretty much, hey, are we going to accept these reports? I don't think there's anything we need to actually deliberate on necessarily. This is sort of just a doing business article.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a standard article. It's required by charter. We're finalizing the reports now. They're be printed and bound and available at town meeting. Usually have a table set up. And the select board did vote to include and recommend on March 14th.
Okay. Oh, actually, curses. I forgot one thing, 2 things. So side note, we're going to look at 26, 27 of the articles tonight. Those that we do not vote on, or if we get to the end and Broussard comes to my house and tells me to stop this and hits me over the head with something, at that point, we do have a secondary option that we can jump to, which is, I talked to Connor about this. He had a genius idea where we have an upcoming joint meeting with the select board, right? At the I think it's the 24th and the 26th. At that meeting, we will theoretically have maybe 3 or 4 articles left over that we have to deliberate and vote on. Could take all of 7 minutes because we'll have all of the information. Budgets will be as close to finalized as they ever will be. And at that point, we would have a quick secondary meeting. So essentially we jump off the joint meeting Zoom, jump onto a Zoom of our own, quickly vote through the remaining articles after a roll call and call it a night. So I just wanted to throw it out there for you guys so you know that that's there. So that if we do, and the benefit is that if we do get to a point where it's late in the evening and you're sick of my voice, we can obviously choose to table the rest of them and jump to that as well. All right, so Article 1, I will take a motion for Article 1.
Motion to recommend Article 1 to Pedro.
And a second.
Second to Napoli.
All right, let's go down the list. And my tablet just went to sleep, so I don't have my list. Here we go. DiNapoli.
DiNapoli, yes.
DiNardo.
DiNardo, yes.
Diaz.
Diaz, yes.
DePietro.
Yes.
Jenkins.
Jenkins, yes.
Lamb.
Lamb, yes.
Bamosi.
Mosey's yes.
And I am a yes. Helen's yes. All right, Article 1 is recommended. Article 2, is this the one? No. Article 2 is to amend the revolving fund bylaw to establish fire/EMS vehicle and equipment maintenance revolving fund and to establish spending limits for revolving funds to see if the town will vote to amend. I always forget, is that chapter? Section? I think it's section. 26-6, Department revolving, oh no, it's chapter. Section E, authorized revolving funds of Chapter 26. Financial affairs bylaws of the town of Easton, general bylaws, by adding an additional revolving fund to the table as follows. I am not going to read through the entire thing, but the explanation is this article amends the bylaw to add an additional revolving fund for the fire and rescue department and sets the annual spending limits for all revolving funds established pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half. Actual expenditures cannot exceed the balance in the fund, even if the expenditures are less than the established limits. Any questions on that? Michael, I think this is pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
But-
so with the exception of the one new fund, all the funds and the totals are the same as last year. And again, this is an annual item that appears every year on the warrant. The one new revolving fund establishes that fire vehicle maintenance revolving fund with a limit of $100,000. So the idea here is Chief Alexander, along with Connor, has hired a mechanic for the fire department that's working really great locally, and something that we want to have the financial structure in place to consider exploring IMAs with neighboring communities that do not have an in-house mechanic. So basically those communities could bring their vehicles to us, we would service, charge them, and then we would use this account to deposit the funds, and then we would be able to use them for the revenue for the maintenance of our own fleet here in Easton. So it's really a credit to the chief for some creative thinking. Some other communities have done this and it works very well. So the select board voted to include and recommend this on March 28th. We think it's a good thing, and we'd ask for your recommendation tonight.
One question before I kick it to everybody else. In the past, if there was maintenance, that was just a standard department byline that was covered. It wasn't something that was caught out into this type of individual revolving fund. It was essentially, all right, we're going to build maintenance into our individual budgetary associations. Some maintenance would be obviously over the limit of actually worth the time and effort and money, and that would be obviously then a capital or replacement discussion. But this builds it in so that we have an existing revolving option that this is across, and that's great detail on that additional piece, which is the revolving option for towns. Thank you, sir. Anyone else have any other questions on this one?
Motion to recommend Article 2 to Petro.
Pizza jumps right in. Do I have a second?
Seconded by DiNardo.
Let's go down the list. DiNapoli,
DiNapoli, yes.
DiNardo,
DiNardo, yes.
Diaz,
Diaz, yes.
Petro,
DePietro, yes.
Jenkins,
Jenkins, yes.
Lamb,
Lamb, yes.
Vamosi,
Mossy, yes.
and I am a yes. Thank you all. Let's recommend on number 2. Number 3, elected officials' compensation. To see if the town will vote to fix the salary and compensation of all elected officials, not all. FinCom's not on there, FYI. As provided by section 108 of chapter 41 of the general laws as follows. You can see the totals. These are annual, right, Michael? I just want to make sure.
Yes, yeah, this is an annual compensation, a modest stipend, and again, it's on the town meeting warrant every year.
And with that, I mean, this one, $1,800.
Motion to recommend for DiNardo.
Do I have a second?
Yes, second.
Diaz. DiNapoli,
DiNapoli, yes.
DiNardo,
DiNardo, yes.
Diaz,
Diaz, yes.
Petro,
DePietro, yes.
Jenkins,
Jenkins, yes.
Vamosi,
Mossy's, yes.
Lamb.
Lamb, yes.
I missed you the first time. And Helen is a yes. All righty. That one's relatively easy. Slight dig at the town for not paying the FinCom an exorbitant amount of money of $1,800 a year, but we'll go with that. All right, so let's see. So Article 4, payment of bills from a prior fiscal year. There's nothing listed here. I don't know if we have any that we've discovered as of yet. Wendy, I assume this one's over to you.
Yeah, we don't have any prior year bills at this time.
Okay, so we will skip 4. And then I believe we will skip 5.
Correct.
Supplement fiscal year 2022 budgets. We don't have that finalized yet. So we're on to Article 6, which is transfer to unemployment trust fund. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and transfer a sum of money into the unemployment trust fund or take any other action relative thereto. Explanation: the unemployment trust fund balance is below $20,000 and should be replenished with additional funds. The anticipated transfer amount is $20,000. The select board did recommend. Michael, this is again pretty straightforward, but this is I feel like this just came up at the last one and we talked about it relatively quickly, that it is exactly what it says, right? This is an unemployment trust fund for the town itself.
Yeah, so Wendy can jump in if I miss anything, but so the town maintains a variety of trust funds. One of them is unemployment. We self-insure for unemployment. Usually we have about a 5-digit balance in there, so nothing, extraordinary, but due to budget cuts over the last couple of years, positions were eliminated. We've dropped below that recently. So this would transfer 20,000 back into that account. And the select board voted to include and recommend this on March 14th. So we asked for your recommendation as well.
Do we have any questions on this one before DePietro motions it?
Motion to recommend DePietro.
There we go. Second.
Second
Yes,
to
second.
Napoli.
We're fighting over it. We'll give it to DiNapoli on that one because she was louder. Let's go down the list. DiNapoli.
DiNapoli, yes.
DiNardo.
Bernardo, yes.
Diaz.
Diaz, yes.
You can have the next one.
DePietro, yes.
Joe is a yes. Jenkins.
Yes.
Lamb.
Lamb, yes.
Bamosi.
Bamosi, yes.
And I am a yes. 6 is a recommend. 7 is the operating budget, which we do not have. Although, Michael, do you have something you wanted to say about was it about the operating or it's capital, I believe?
Yeah. So, well, 7 and 8, I just wanted to note, Patrick mentioned he forwarded to the finance committee members a copy of town administrator's budget change memo for the operating budget and his preliminary capital budget. So I believe this is the two of the items that you'll discuss on the 27th when Connor will be available. We're still at a deficit. It's just north of 300,000, but you will see in that memo some changes to revenue, including use of ARPA funds for revenue replacement and some changes to the expense side as we get, some final regional school assessments and other fixed cost numbers. So, and then the same with the capital, you saw that memo, but again, that'll be on the 27th.
I assumed capital is not going to change probably all that dramatically. You guys have that pretty well baked, but we haven't finalized it. So it's not voting on yet. True, false, maybe.
Wendy,
Capital memo does have the recommendation, and that will go into the warrant article. I think it was just a matter of timing for when the memo came out. I don't think there was enough time to update the warrant with that article.
Okay. Which is why we're doing it again on the 27th. Perfect. All right, so let's move on to 9. So this was the one that I wasn't sure of. Select board hasn't recommended it. They've recommended a lot of the others. I wasn't sure if there was additional detail that's missing from this one or if this is
so not Stephanie can jump in if I misspeak on this, but I can bring you up to speed on at least for now. So this article is in anticipation of the Sawmill Village compact neighborhood that's going through permitting with Concom and the planning board. I believe we anticipate it'll wrap up this spring. And if that's the case, one of the components of an MOU that the developer has already executed with the select board is for mitigation for traffic related to the project for design and constructing a signal at the Pequannock and Foundry Street intersection. I think we all know if anyone who drives to that intersection, it's a tough spot. We are working with the state to do kind of a major project, but that's about 5 to 10 years out. So this would get us through that project. As part of that, the developer needs to grant easements on their property to us on the south side of Foundry Street so that we can widen the road. And that's what this article would do. So because it's still in permitting, the select board only voted to include this article. They did not vote to recommend it. I don't know, Stephanie, if you want to add anything.
I think you covered it very well. They are still in permitting.
So with that, should we not vote to recommend as of yet? I mean, is there going to be a dramatic change in this between the final? I mean, if permitting doesn't go through, like something falls apart, let's say, and we voted to recommend, it's not like you guys are going to come hit us with the newspaper, but at the same time, this seems like a pretty, yes, I think we all would agree that we want a light there. What's the pros and cons of if we do recommend tonight or not? We can always come back to it on the 27th as well.
Yeah, I don't even, Stephanie, do you think it would be through any sort of process by the 27th or?
I'm sorry, April 27th? No, they've
Okay.
continued the planning board hearing to May. I guess the real question, Mike, is if this doesn't get voted at town meeting, I mean, we do expect the project to be permitted,
Right.
and the town needs to authorize the select board to accept the easements. So I think to Patrick's question, if the project doesn't get permitted, I don't think this would be binding.
We're voting to accept
In-
the easements,
Right.
not
They'd have to give the-
causing the easement. I mean, if they don't make the easement, it's moot.
We can't
but
accept
As
it.
a-
Correct,
Right.
correct.
Point.
Yeah.
Right,
This was voted and included by the select board early March. So I think at that point it was kind of, maybe wait and see. But no, I don't think there's anything to hold you up from voting to recommend this. And as you've discussed, if it doesn't happen, then it's not binding.
So
Motion to
before
recommend
that,
this
wait. Can't jump the gun on every one of them. Before we get to Michael motioning, are there any questions, any discussion on this that anyone wants to raise?
Yeah, is this for the project that they're planning to do behind the Camelot Estates? So I know there's been a lot of talk in Camelot Estates around a project being built sort of in between Pequannock and Camelot
I
Estates.
think,
Is that
I
this-
think you're, Kelly, I think you're talking about 20 South Street.
Okay,
Would that be that is a flexible development?
okay. I think that's it. So this one is going to be located.
This is where the old Belcher Foundry is located.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
so across the street from it. Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So so where that turn is that everyone loves, it's across the street from the house with the wrought iron fence.
Right, correct.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Before Michael motions, does anyone else have any other questions? Seeing none,
Motion to recommend article.
we have a second.
Second to Napoli.
Thank you. I mean, we're the fun committee, be honest, right? DiNapoli,
DiNapoli, yes.
DiNardo,
DiNardo, yes.
Diaz,
Diaz, yes.
Petro,
Petro, yes.
Jenkins,
Jenkins, yes.
Lamb,
Lamb, yes.
Famosi,
But mostly yes.
and I am a yes. 9 is a recommend. All right, 10. Speaking of easements, easement for National Grid installation of underground electrical utilities for the Red Mill Road water treatment plant. Explanation: this easement has been requested by National Grid for the installation of underground electrical services to the future Red Mill Road water treatment plant, which is currently under construction. Property in question is town-owned, and the easement is necessary to provide utilities to the building. A plan depicting the easement is on file with the Select Board's office.
So Article 9 was us receiving an easement. Article 10 is us granting an easement, as
Right.
Patrick read. The plan is currently under construction. The property that the lines will be on belongs to the town, and the easement is necessary in order to bring the utilities into the building. And the select board voted to include and recommend this on March 14th. So we'd ask for your recommendation as well.
Anybody on this one? This one quite possibly couldn't spell it out any clearer, I don't think. Seeing none,
Motion to recommend Petro.
go have a second.
Second.
Thank you. DiNapoli,
DiNapoli, yes.
DiNardo,
DiNardo, yes.
Diaz,
Diaz, yes.
DePietro,
Petro, yes.
Jenkins,
Jenkins, yes.
Lamb,
Lamb, yes.
Famosi,
Mostly is yes.
and I am a yes. That is also a recommend. All right, 11 is a bit of a toothy one. I'm going to read the first part and then the explanation. To see if the town will, payment agreement bylaw. To see if the town will vote to amend its general bylaws by adopting a payment agreement bylaw as permitted by MGL Chapter 60, Section 62A, as set forth below, and to authorize the town clerk to insert chapter and section numbers as necessary for inclusion in the Easton Code or take any other action relative thereto. The further information is there, but explanation at present, MGL Chapter 60, Section 15 limits the waiver of interest to $15. There are occasionally circumstances where it behooves the town to waive more interest on a property and tax the title for the ultimate benefit of the town. Acceptance of this article would enable the collector treasurer to enter into written agreements to release tax titles while not creating an insurmountable burden of the taxpayer. If I understand this one, Michael, feel free to tell me. There's moments where some level of interest that has been charged on a property tax, be it in arrears or whatever it might be, that is expected income, or it's been listed as expected income, because we have it obviously on the books, is this has now been charged as an interest account, where if there is current state, someone could enter in a written agreement, or I'm sorry, the treasurer could enter in a written agreement to release that, with that understanding that this is obviously probably behooving or moving something forward, or a sale or whatever it might be. That's my incredibly badly phrased rough level estimate of it.
I think that's right. And Wendy, jump in if I don't fill in the blanks, but basically right now the treasurer can only waive up to $15 worth of interest for anyone by law. This would allow the treasurer to waive up to 50%. And sometimes there's a benefit to that to the town, basically to the owner could enter an payment agreement, get the property back on the tax roll. So it's a kind of a win-win for everybody, as opposed to going through the tax title process, which would be costly, and the town basically would end up owning the property, which is not something we like to be in the business of. So yeah, I think you covered it. Wendy, anything else?
I just wanted to also add that, in some instances, there are properties that might be delinquent in their taxes, but maybe the town does not want to foreclose on that property. And so it could be in tax title for many years. And you get to the point where the interest is so great that you could have a tax title that it really exceeds the value of the property. And it would make it difficult to then sell that property to somebody else who may want to redevelop that.
Okay, awesome. Got one right. Any questions, anyone?
Yeah, real quick. So just mechanically, this is 62A allows us to override section 15. And that's what we're doing here. We're adding a bylaw that trumps the $15 limit.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so at present, the
Permissible in
Mass
the
General,
general laws.
yeah.
Yep, just making sure. I was making sure I understood the mechanics of it. So thank you.
Anyone else?
Pausing.
Just a real quick question as well. When they make the determination of how much they're going to waive or change the number to percentage wise, is that something that is done through committee select board, or is that something that is done solely with the treasurer collector?
It's done by the treasurer collector.
Up to 50% though. They can't go above that based on this bylaw.
Right.
And tax title interest is 16%. And again, the thing with tax, it's compounding. So,
Right.
You get to the point where you're earning interest on the interest over time. So it can be pretty significant.
Any other questions?
A means of discussion. I don't know if it's even a question, but this is vesting this power with the treasurer. I honestly don't have a problem. I'm inclined to recommend it, but is there any concern to Tim, what you were just saying? Should this be something that the select board ought to have authority over, a rubber stamp, or something, or is this something that it just makes sense for the treasurer to do this unilaterally? I'm comfortable with it. I'm just curious if it's worth discussing.
I guess the question comes down to how often is this happening on an annual basis? I mean, if we're talking a large amount of properties and a large amount of number, then yeah, I would agree with you. But if it's very limited and isolated incidents annually, I would think the number would be insurmountable enough to leave it where it's at.
Yeah, I don't think it's not frequent. I don't have a number of potential problems with me, but I know the treasurer did discuss with the select board that she will develop a policy to kind of outline when this applies. So again, it wouldn't apply in every case, but if you meet X, Y, and Z criteria, it's a benefit to the town because of X, Y, and Z, then this could kick in. And again, the treasurer already can do payment agreements. So that's something she does under her own purview. With taxpayers, this is just the waiving the interest piece to make it more manageable and reasonable for certain situations.
As of right now, can the select board of their own volition choose to waive it?
No.
No.
No, okay, so there is a zero mechanism right now for that. Okay,
Correct.
okay, thanks.
In the policy she's developing, is she going to put in there how she communicates how many are being done a year as well? Just to get a better understanding of what Tim was talking about. If it's just here and there, then obviously we wouldn't need a select board to look in on it, but if it's happening more often, then that might be something we want to consider in the future.
Yeah, I mean, Wendy, we could talk about a way to report that out somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this will be in very limited circumstances. It's really only where it's to the benefit of the town to get this property back onto the tax rolls.
So my guess would be, and this is me just supposing, I think, but if we're looking at some of the different projects that come before town meeting, right, like various different easement projects like we've just seen, or various different like zoning changes or whatever it might be, there's a couple different boards that something like this would probably be part of the discussion. Like, hey, someone wants to redevelop or develop this plot or what have you. In that process, this is the treasurer's purview to reduce this existing tax burden, et cetera, or the interest burden. These are all good questions, though. Anybody else? Seeing none.
Motion to recommend to Petra.
Do we have a second?
Second to Napoli.
Let's go on the list. What is this? This 11. DiNapoli.
DiNapoli, yes.
DiNardo.
DiNardo, yes.
Diaz.
Diaz, yes.
Petro.
Petra, yes.
Jenkins.
Jenkins, yes.
Mosi.
Vamosi is yes.
Lamb.
Lamb, yes.
And I am a yes. 11 is a yes. All right, 12. Accept Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 200A, Section 9A, to see if the town will accept the provisions of MGL Chapter 200A, Section 9A, to authorize the treasurer to utilize the alternative procedure for disposing of abandoned funds held in the custody of the town, as provided for in MGL Chapter 200A, Section 9AB. Explanation: acceptance of this section will provide an expedited process for voiding checks that are stale dated, lost, or uncashed for any reason for more than 1 year past the date of issuance. Question on this: I don't know what stale dated meant. I wanted to ask that. And then just if I'm understanding this, this is, hey, we have a check that has been sent out from the town and someone has not cashed. If 12 months later, there's a process already in place, but 12 months later, there's now with this an expedited process to essentially take that money off the expected expenditure books.
So I can answer that. So as far as stale dated checks go, basically, if you write a check out to somebody after 6 months, most banks will not accept that check to cash that. The date becomes stale in a sense. So it's too old for them to cash. So when we issue our checks, whether they're usually like accounts payable checks, if those checks are outstanding for longer than 6 months or a year, there's a process that needs to be gone through to try to either reissue those checks so that they do clear, or after a certain period of time, after you've advertised it, the town can then just basically keep that money and take it off the books of it as an outstanding check and bring it back in as a receipt.
Got it. Awesome.
Question: does this expedited process alter meaningfully the rights of any person in town to lay claim to that money? In other words, I don't know, I misplace a check and 9 months later I find it and go, oh, that's right, Wendy owed me money. Is it something where I no longer have a claim to that money with this expedited process, or sort of mechanically, how does it alter? It seems very sensible because you don't want liabilities lingering, but I'm just curious how that alters things from the townsperson perspective.
So right now, if somebody had a stale dated check and they contacted us and said, I came across this check, I forgot to cash it. Depending on if it's just slightly over 6 months, we can call the bank and the bank can accept that as payment if they have it, or if it's outstanding and it hasn't cleared and they don't have it, we can, issue a stop payment to void it and reissue it. And before we sort of go through the abandoned check process, then they will get that money back. But if after a certain point, we go through this process and, nobody claims the money, and then we take it back in as revenue, then, at that point, they sort of lose claim to that money.
So this would change the time at which you lose claim to the money. It would make it shorter. Is that correct?
Make it shorter, or, one thing that we would do is we go through the list of the checks, and, we try to get people to respond and let us know if they, want a check reissued to them. So that's one of the first things that we do. We send out a letter saying, hey, we noticed that you have this check, it hasn't cleared. If you've lost the check, you can, send us this paper back and let us know, and we'll reissue you a check. If after that point, we don't get a response, then depending on the dollar amount of the outstanding check, and I think it's if it's less than $100, then what we can do is we can post a listing of the checks that have been unclaimed on the website, kind of like findmassmoney.com. And if after a certain amount of time, nobody responds to that, then we can take that money back in as revenue. And if it's over $100, I believe we have to put some sort of ad in a paper. I think it has to be in an area of circulation near where the vendor resides.
Yeah,
And then you have to still hold on to that for a year.
Okay, yeah, my reason for asking was just to get a sense of, with the change, does it alter how long a person is able to lay claim to the money, irrespective of whether they have lost the check, forgotten about it, any other imaginable thing? It sounds like it shortens it a little bit, but it sounds like there's a robust process in place, so it's not like really anybody's going to get surprised or
right.
Yeah, okay. That's really what I was getting at, just whether it was hey, you had a year, now you've got 3 weeks, this type of thing, which sounds like it's not. And so, motion to recommend to Petra, unless somebody else.
Before you jump right in.
If I could ask a question, Wendy, it sounded more to me like it was an accounting practice or policy. Is that just changing your accounting practices? As far as having checks that are either misplaced, lost, non-cash, because usually in most accounting systems, after a certain period of time, they would come off your books anyway, correct?
We do not take them off the books unless we have to go through a process. So we can't just say, oh, this, it's been 5 years, we're going to take it off. You still do have to go through a process to do that. And by accepting this chapter of the law, I think for the smaller amounts, you can just put it out on the website without having to, send, advertise more frequently in the paper for the, particularly the smaller amounts.
Okay.
Before Mike jumps the gun again, does anyone else have any questions? Seeing none.
Motion to recommend to Petra.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. DiNapoli.
DiNapoli, yes.
DiNardo.
DiNardo, yes.
Diaz.
Diaz, yes.
Petra.
Petra, yes.
Jenkins.
Jenkins, yes.
Lamb.
Lamb, yes.
Vimosi.
Vimosi is yes.
And Patrick Helen is a yes. 12 is a yes. All right, so that's 1 through 12. Now we're moving on into the second section of our game show, which is the Thomas Broussard Show. Former FinCom member, some say the best FinCom member. I don't, but some do.
Patrick, I'm sorry to interrupt. I can speak to 13 as well. That's a conservation commission.
Sure.
I don't know if I'm while I'm here, if you want me to do that or not. I don't mean to.
Oh yeah, no, sorry, you're right. 13's conservation and then 14's community. Never mind, it's not the Tom Broussard show. Let's go back to 13 for the amendment of wetland protection. So amendment of wetland protection bylaw to include minor project exemptions consistent with the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act Regulations 310, CMR 10. Explanation, there are certain minor projects that will not have a negative impact on wetland resource areas. For example, currently a homeowner would need a permit to replace or move the shed from one side of the yard to another. Another example is replacing or repairing a deck that is within an existing lawn and more than 50 feet from a wetland. Planting trees within the buffer zone, repairing existing roads, traffic signals, and septic systems. Perk tests currently all require permits under the bylaw. These minor projects can be exempted similar to the state law or can be administratively approved with a site inspection under the proposed bylaw revision, reducing the permitting, time, and financial burden on homeowners. The one question I have on this one is, I assume, but I don't know, the only sort of benefit to this not being on there is that there's obviously a distinct amount of revenue that comes from those multiple, theoretically incredibly annoying for small project permits. I assume it's negligible though, right? I assume it's not a massive loss for that.
Michael,
Yeah,
would you like me to answer that question? It is negligible.
Okay.
Because they are minor projects, there's a very low fee associated with it. So it wouldn't be a big loss of revenue.
Perfect. I assume.
And what's happening is that people don't bother to file with the Conservation Commission because.
Right. They don't want to go through the hassle.
And the cost.
Got it. As someone who lived in Southie as a apartment got renovated around me without a permit, I can see why that might happen. Maybe.
Or this isn't recorded in the public record or anything, that admission.
No, it is. I'll give you her name. She can definitely be found. Michael, do you have anything else you want to add on top of that?
Nope, I think the explanation is pretty cut and dry. Nothing
Does
else.
anyone have any other questions?
Just curious what percentage of our population is in this kind of wetland zone space, roughly.
99%.
It's not 99, but it is. I mean, Easton has a lot of wetlands that affect homeowners as well as larger development projects. So
that's a new community member question right there. I mean, I know there are some around me, but I don't know the full scope. So
I would just add, if I could, Stephanie can probably point you in a better direction, but if you go to the town of Easton's GIS system, or maybe it's GSI, I always get those letters incorrect. You can see our entire town and you can overlay maps like floodplains, wetlands, chapter 61 land, which is farm, so that you can visually see, while it's not Patrick's imprecise 99%, there is a significant amount of either floodplain or wetlands in Easton. And that's a neat way for people, it's an asset to the town to be able to see what's going on in our land.
yeah, and Tom, I would be remiss if I didn't put a caveat there that the wetland layers are an estimate of where the wetlands exist. So if you do look at that layer and it doesn't show wetlands on your property, that doesn't mean that there might not be wetlands. So, just please contact the conservation agent. We have a form you can fill out and she will let you know if there are wetlands on your property or not.
I have never done this. It's super cool. I'm doing it live and in person right now. You know what I mean?
Derailing the FinCom committee meeting.
Literally the best FinCom member ever, and it drives me nuts. Look how good he is. He just throws out a GIS thing and boom, there we go.
You're right. Tom is the man.
You already iced the kicker. You built me up and then you had to go through another one, Article 13. So the kick will be
that
wide
was not
right.
planned. No. All right, with that, any other questions for 13?
Yeah, I got a quick question, Stephanie, or anybody. This doesn't, I don't follow the details on this, but it sounds like it encompasses minor projects on places where there's already, like you said, a lawn or something's already there. So this, I'm sort of taking on your word and on faith that this is not an end run around wetland protection.
No, no, you're right. It is not. It is not something in the guise of making it more difficult or more strict. And this is one instance.
I meant the other way, making it more easy, but getting rid
Oh,
of
oh, you mean easier.
protection.
You are correct on that. Yes, it's not making it easier to do an end run around the wetlands protection bylaw.
Okay,
It's
so
just
this is
making-
administrative.
It's administrative, and again, these are logical things. They're exempt from filing at the state level. Your local level bylaw is supposed to be more strict, but this is just a little too restrictive. It takes a lot of time, staff time, and again, it can be a burden on homeowners to get a permit to move a shed, as the example here indicates.
Got it. Got it. Nobody else asking a question? Motion to recommend to Petra.
Do I have a second?
Seconded by
Second,
DiNardo.
We're giving that one to DiNardo. DiNapoli already got one on a
Yeah.
clash. DiNapoli,
DiNapoli, yes.
DiNardo,
DiNardo, yes.
Diaz,
Diaz, yes.
Petro,
Petra, yes.
Jenkins,
Jenkins, yes.
Lamb,
Yes.
Mimosi,
Mostly is yes.
and I am a yes, and I'm running out of room here. Thank you all. All right, so that's now we're into the best part of the hour. Apologies for the early warning on that one. Wendy and Michael, I don't know if you guys necessarily need to stick around or if you'd like to.
So I'm going to hang out until Article 24. It's kind of within the CPA, but it's kind of administrative too. So I'll hang out for that, but then I'll take off. But I'll just go on mute for now.
Okay. All right. So it's the Broussard Bonanza time. So Article 14, reserve additional FY 2022 community preservation funds. I had a thought, Tom. I don't want to put you on the spot, unrehearsed moment, but just a quick preamble, if you could, about community preservation, just for all the board members. Obviously, we have some people on the committee that have not been here since the glory days of the Broussard times. But if you could just give a quick snapshot about really the thing that I think is always really interesting about it is what can this funding be used for, i.e., can we take money from this and suddenly just, we all get Porsches? No. Why, et cetera. Just a short, sweet, to the point, just to give us an idea before we dive through these is what I thought.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for inviting us. I say us because although I have the introductions and accolades, truly it's people like Greg Strange and the rest of the CPC that have committed so much of their time and effort to managing the Community Preservation Act that the state of Massachusetts enacted back in 2000. I certainly give credit as well to our town partners. Wendy helps us with budgeting and financial questions. Stephanie and Wayne tirelessly support the committee from a planning perspective and keep us on track. So there's a lot of people that go into the goodness that the town of Easton created when they followed the September 2000 introduction of the Massachusetts Community Preservation Act by adopting in April of 2021. So we were really quick. We were one of the first towns to also adopt this legislation. And really what it does is it enables our community to place a surcharge on our residents. The surcharge can be up to 3%. There are benefits to going to 3%, like Easton did right away in April of 2001, because the state matches funds. And that's what this act is designed to do. It's to introduce state money to those towns and cities that also are aligned with the goals of the act. And as Patrick alluded to, there are some very central and important ones. The act is really designed to protect open space. So if you think of Easton, I can't think of probably a more powerful thought than the fact that we do value preserving open space for hiking trails. I think at the select board the other night, it was pointed out how we seem to produce and manufacture Eagle Scouts at a rate that nobody else can do. The other aspects of the fund are to support historic preservation, which I would probably call the second crown gem or the first crown gem of Easton, which is all of the historical architecture and items that we are lucky to enjoy. The third crown gem, and these are not in any order, except as how it's listed on our information, is affordable housing. And so the fund mandates that if you participate in it, that you have to support affordable housing. And then the last component is outdoor recreation. So when I think of Easton, candidly, I think of all four of these things coming to mind and really representing all the facets of what so many of our residents firmly believe in. And it's fundamentally a mechanism that is designed purposely to sit outside of the traditional budgeting process or capital process, because it really does speak to those projects that, if not for this type of funding and community support, most likely would not pass muster for the limited capital and or operating budget funds that are available. I think that the committee and this fund and what the residents support do some pretty amazing things to really protect the integrity and heritage that Easton has been come to known for. So probably not as short as you could have done, Patrick, but hopefully that gave everybody a flavor. And I guess just for context, since 2001, when we signed on, we're talking about $30 million of funds that have been raised through this mechanism, of which the state contributed just under 10. So they match at about 30%. If it's okay, that can actually lead into a little bit of explanation on Article 14.
I hit it.
So Article 14 is basically the allocation to three of the critical components that we are, by the Community Preservation Act legislation, mandated to fund. And what that means is we have to dedicate 10% of our budget to open space and recreation, 10% of our budget for historic resources, and 10% for community housing. And you'll note that these amounts are all $45,570. And the reason for that is that the original budget for 2022 was projected to be 1.775 million. The revised budget, due to the state granting us higher than expected awards, which is always welcome, was 2.174 million. The difference in total is 475,697 of incremental funding. And you'll notice that 10% of that incremental funding is required for us to put in reserves, which matches these three amounts and items that you see. So hopefully that helps with by way of explanation. It's largely a housekeeping article for us to allocate the appropriate percentage for the fund reserves because we received additional funds than we expected. And that sounded good. That's because Wendy helped me with all that.
You know what I'm saying? Like I gave him no prep and I was like, can you just, give us a quick off the cuff? And he was like, here's a speech that talks about how amazing everything that Easton is. Just unbelievable. Guys, he's a gem. All right. So to that point,
can we just check the number on the Article 14 again? For the, I didn't hear if you guys said 45 or 47. I have printed 47.
I'm sorry if I transpose, it's 47,570.
Very good. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Sir. Did anyone else have any questions on this one?
Motion to recommend, DePietro.
Thank you, Mr. DePietro. Do I have a second?
Yes,
Second to Napoli.
Now we're giving it to Diaz on that one. She wins. DiNapoli.
DiNapoli, yes.
DiNardo.
DiNardo, yes.
Diaz.
Diaz, yes.
DePietro.
DePietro, yes.
Jenkins,
Jenkins.
yes.
Lamb.
Lamb, yes.
Ramosi.
Most yes.
And I am a yes. Thank you. Article 15. Wait, hold on. 14. Article 15, report and FY 2023 budget of the Community Preservation Committee to see if the town will vote to act on the report of the Community Preservation Committee on the fiscal year 2023 Community Preservation budget and to appropriate a reserve for later appropriation monies from Community Preservation Fund annual revenues or available funds for the administrative expenses of the Community Preservation Committee, the payment of debt service, the undertaking of preservation projects, and other necessary and proper expenses for the year. Tom, do you want to just give a quick snapshot of the actual dollars and cents on this one?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually a little bit misleading in terms of all of the activity that actually goes on from a financial perspective for our committee. So administrative expenses, as we vet projects and as we vet the applications that come before us, the town expends effort, we expend expenses at times. So the Massachusetts general law supports a 5% allocation for administrative expenses. And in essence, our budget for FY23 is overall $2,025,000. This would be 5% of that. And I'll get into, when I say the budget, what that really means. It really speaks to the estimated revenues we expect to get in total via the 3% surcharge, state funding amounts, and then some investment income that we hold. So that's the administrative expenses. The debt service is pretty straightforward. The CPC is authorized, or I guess one of the financial instruments that are available to us as a community is to enable us to use debt to perform some of our projects. This would be the debt service of those aforementioned projects. And then the annual budgeted reserve, that would be if we do not appropriate all of the fundings that we take in a given year, then we are able to put it in a budgeted reserve, a general reserve, so to speak. So it's available for utilization in other years and or throughout the year if other projects come up. Just what's not on here, and I think it adds some color, we are estimating to take in roughly $2,025,000 worth of revenues, largely the 3% surcharge. I think it's $400,000, Wendy will correct me, from state funding, and then $50,000 from investment income. And the reason why you don't see it here is because it's largely appropriated, as in the next article that's to come, the CPA funding for the Affordable Housing Trust, for example, that will be 10% of the $2,025,000. So what you don't really see here are all the projects or the appropriations, so to speak. Those actually come out in different warrant articles that the community and residents vote on at large. So it looks like a very slim 3-line item budget, but there's a lot of activity. It just presents itself in different articles that we ask residents to approve with our collective support, whether it's Select Board, FinCom, or the Community Preservation Committee.
I think that's a great point, Tom, because that's essentially 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 that are all sort of awaiting final numbers. But your point about these individual actions, that's what the following articles are going to be all on. So that's a great clarification. Do we have any questions on this?
I do have a quick question, Tom. Thank you so much for your presentation and the historical information. Can you give some examples of projects you completed last year? Seeing that because you read my mind, I'm like, wow, that's a lot of money for only 3 projects. And then you said, oh, there are a lot of projects, then they're forthcoming. So can you cite some examples of projects that were completed last year?
I can, and Stephanie, if you could keep me honest, I actually realized that I printed off projects that were prior to 2020, looking at the community preservation plan. I think I have 2021. No, this is the debt service schedule.
Yeah. Or even 2020 is fine, just to get a sense of like where the money is.
But here's a good one. Actually, this is I think I did find it. Sorry. I didn't want Patrick to think I might be unprepared or caught off guard. He tries to do that regularly. So like the town hall restoration was approximately 1.45 million. Wheaton Farm barn was $190,000. The Unionville field revitalization, which is actually pickleball courts over by Buddy's Union Villa, was $320,000. I think from a historical perspective, we've done things that supported the Queesit House rehabilitation in the back. Greg, you have a much more historical perspective. So if there are other projects that come to mind that are kind of bellwether projects, would you mind just sharing a couple of them?
Sure. Quickly, I'd say the continued support to date, we've spent $850,000 on Oaks Ames Memorial Hall. We have spent, I think, $350,000 on the library. including the Queeset House. We were the main funder of the restoration of the gardens at Queeset. We supplied I mean the townspeople of Easton, the preservation restriction that allowed for the purchase of Governor Ames' estate through the trustees of the reservation. One of the biggest ones in town, one that really got the ball rolling, was Shovel Works. CPA was one of the main funding sources for that, and such a wonderful deal was put together. We lent about $5.5 million, I think, Wendy, correct me if I'm wrong, which we will be giving back at the latest by, I think, 2032. So we've to date funded 110 projects, some
And-
small.
Thank you.
And if I could pipe in, list anyone think that the town hasn't funded recreation? The fields at on Chestnut Street were funded with CPA funds, as well as Alley's Park on Pine Street.
Thank you.
I appreciate the question, Shireen. And there is, if anybody has the inclination, there's an awesome website. First of all, you can go to our own town website, and there's a link to a 2020 master plan, which provides a lot of great historical examples. There's a website called the communitypreservation.org that has a tremendous amount of information on the CPA. And I fear candidly that we just weren't able to even do that justice, and Stephanie and Greg were fantastic, but there's just a lot of projects that the residents of this town choose to support via this mechanism. It's a long list.
Thank you all. Great question. Great answers. Anyone else? Any other questions that come up for this one?
Motion to recommend to Petro.
Do I have a second?
Second to Napoli.
We'll go with Napoli on that one. DiNapoli.
DiNapoli, yes.
DiNardo.
DiNardo, yes.
Diaz.
Yes.
DePietro.
DePietro, yes.
Jenkins.
Jenkins, yes.
Lamb.
Lamb, yes.
Famosi.
Mostly, yes.
I am a yes. 15 is a recommend. All right, on to, where's my thing? 16, CPA funding for Affordable Housing Trust. I'm just going to read the explanation. This article would fund the Affordable Housing Trust activities for fiscal year 2023. Trust works to implement the goals and strategies of Easton's state-mandated housing production plan and to provide resources and affordable housing options to low and moderate income residents. FY 2023 activities will include funding of the Home Buyer Assistance Program, support for a nonprofit developer to create affordable family housing on Quanticut Avenue and Morse Road, and support for planning work and related administration for the town to meet its Chapter 40B requirement. Pretty straightforward. Tom, do you have any flavor you want to add on that one?
No, you hit the nail on the head. The 202,500 is the obligatory 10% that we fund. That's a great example of the projects. And for historical context, last year we funded 177,500. And in 2020, we funded $500,000, $250,000 of which was emergency rental assistance related to programs associated with COVID and what was going on there. So to your point, pretty straightforward in this one.
Any questions on 16? Nothing? Does anyone else want to make a motion, or is it we're just going to give it to Mike?
I'll make a motion to accept Article 16.
Ah, Robert gets in there. Do I have a second? Not Mike.
Second, Petro.
Damn it. DiNapoli.
DiNapoli, yes.
DiNardo.
DiNardo, yes.
Diaz.
Yes.
Petro.
Petro, yes.
Jenkins.
Jenkins, yes.
Famosi.
Mostly, yes.
Lamb.
Lamb, yes.
And I am a yes. All right, so that's 16. On to 17. Supplemental funding for town hall exterior restoration. To see if the town will vote in accordance to appropriate the sum of $225,000 from community preservation for historical resources to restore the exterior of Easton Town Hall or take any other action relative thereto. Explanation. I don't have to go through the full explanation. I don't think on this one. This one's pretty clear. But Tom, do you want to do dollars and cents on this one?
Yep, I can just give you the short version. I think everybody knows the cost of a 2x4 largely increased over the last couple of years. Contractor availability is difficult. And when you're working with a historic structure such as town hall, when you actually open up the windows or when you start to do some of the work, invariably you find some more items to do. So this really represents the escalation fundamentally of the cost structure, finding new items and enabling us to do some of the items that are referenced here in the explanation regarding windows restoration, front entrance portico restoration, and window restoration. So this is just supplemental based upon items and cost increases that have been found.
One question I have for this is that I assume there's nothing barring you from going through an appropriation process like this again in the next year or two if there's additional work or additional needed work that comes up as you're fixing or repairing other items.
You are correct, and it even doesn't have to necessarily be associated, quote unquote, with fixing. Sometimes, like on the next article, you have a Unionville field pickleball court estimate where you have an application that's been submitted to you by residents in the town, and we all think that it makes sense. Then they go to market to get bids, and the bids come back materially higher, necessitating us to come back and revisit the original ask. So there's nothing prohibiting that.
It would still have to go through the same process of town meeting approval, no matter what though.
Well said. All appropriations that aren't originally approved have to go through the process. And I guess on the inverse, in case anybody's wondering about that, just because you get the appropriation approval doesn't mean that you have to spend it all. And if there are monies that are available at the end, then we have the opportunity to scoop them back and put them to other good use in the general fund. Not that we can choose what gets done with them. It just becomes freed up for others to use to be used again if the community votes for it.
Thank you, sir. Any questions on, what are we on, 17?
Yeah, was any of the money that was originally appropriated for this put into contingency for these kinds of increases? And are we anticipating creating contingency for the additional money going in now?
So usually Greg Swan and Stephanie, I'm a little out of my depth, so tell me if I'm stepping on toes, but Greg Swan is usually our contact and does a great job at building in contingencies. He's very thoughtful. Usually it follows accepted norms. In this particular case, it really was once we were able to get in and identify, for example, that there was asbestos contamination around the windows in a more extensive fashion than we expected. Candidly, it went right through the contingency. We are working, I will tell you this, we are working as a committee to contemplate our timing of when we get applications and when we put warrant articles out, meaning instead of necessarily getting an application, putting an amount down and not having the bids in hand, we are working hard to get concrete bids in hand. So that way we can make sure the warrant article not just addresses the bid, but it also addresses the appropriate contingency level so that hopefully we avoid instances of having to go back to the apple and take a second bite, so to speak.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Tom. Any other questions?
Motion to recommend to Petro.
Do I have a second?
Lamb,
Second to Napoli. Sorry.
Lamb got there. She got there. All right. DiNapoli.
DiNapoli, yes.
DiNardo.
DiNardo, yes.
Diaz.
Yes, yes.
Petro.
Petro, yes.
Jenkins.
Jenkins, yes.
Lamb.
Lamb, yes.
Mosi.
Mosi's yes.
And I'm a yes. The loudest phone I've ever heard. All right. That's 17. So we're on to 18, the aforementioned pickleball court. To see if the town will vote in accordance with the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee to appropriate the sum of $253,650 from Community Preservation Fund annual revenues for constructing up to 6 new pickleball courts with associated fencing, access paths, expanded parking, and site drainage at Union Field, or take any other action relative thereto. Question: am I insane, or have we voted on this before? I feel like this came up. So is this coming back around because did it not pass muster at town meeting and I'm nuts, or is this just?
No,
There's
this
a
is
vote coming up, isn't there?
this is the. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was saying the escalation says that there's a vote coming up on April 12th, so it happened, I guess, yesterday, and we're waiting on that vote.
No, it's a
So
bid.
that's when bids were due, and we do have bids back, which is helpful. To Patrick first, this was voted in November 30th of 2020 special town meeting and approved for a $320,000 budget.
Oh, okay.
This is a good example of where we had that initial estimate, thought it was solid, and when we received the bids back the first time, they were almost 2 times, and I think some of the bids were more than that, this amount. This actually represents an increase on that $320,000 of an additional $253,650, bringing the total project that we are requesting recommendation for to $573,650. In terms of pickleball, just to give you some context, pickleball has grown 39% in the last 2 years. There are millions of people that are now playing it. It is currently projected to grow 8% on a CAGR basis through 2028. And I can tell you from a temperature of the town approach, it's pretty hard to get folks to turn out regularly to certain meetings, not FinCom and certainly not Community Preservation Committee. But I want to give credit to the townspeople, and that's probably a group of folks I haven't given appreciation for during this call that deserve it. The residents in our town care deeply and passionately about the topics that the Community Preservation has the good fortune to work with. And every single time that we have a call regarding the pickleball courts, we have 4 to 8 people that join, different people each time. They have played a meaningful role in helping us frame out what the project should look like. They are vocal, they are active, and they are positive influence in our town. And these are the courts that are across from the Beanery and next door to Buddy's Union Villa. I'm happy to say that we did get the bids back on April 12th. One of the bids that we are looking to pursue actually is below the 573,650 by a fair amount. Tim, to your point about contingency, we are inclined not to adjust the ask. We believe that the ask will ensure that this project gets done. These group of people have been waiting, Greg, 5-6 years maybe for the pickleball courts. Is it that long? Feels
I
like
would say 4 years.
4.
Yeah.
So 4 to 5. And so what we expect, Tim, we don't have, I don't have any reason to think it would go over the bid, except that's why you have contingency. And we feel that we'd like to get this project done, and then whatever funds that weren't used, we would put back into the general fund of reserves at a future point.
Hey, Tom. Yeah, I totally misread it. I was under the I was thinking, oh yeah, we approved this, and I didn't even see supplemental. I'm a fool, obviously. But thank you. That was great. And obviously, I have to pick up pickleball now because every time I drive by the fields, it's like it's standing room only at this point on weekends. Does anyone have any other questions on this one? Oh, sorry.
So it's not my imagination. It really, they're in use right now.
Constantly.
Oh yeah, I thought I saw them the other day.
There's a giant group of people that literally put up a sign that says weekends are for the boys and play pickleball all day on Saturdays. And I drive by them a couple times and I'm always like, those people are living life. They're feeling it right now.
And yeah, for context, Dana Barros's gym rents out pickleball courts now. So
really,
it is that big. That's how you know you're getting old, Patrick, when you're not hip to the new things, I guess.
Oh, I've not been hip for 20 years, buddy. It's been a slow, steady decline.
Rotherham has pickleball also.
I'm just curious. Yeah, I'm just curious more. It's not the easiest stretch of road to sometimes get in and out of what you guys are doing at that spot. This includes kind of a look at the impact of the traffic and things like that.
Yes, parking was considered, Stephanie.
Yes, the parking lot will be expanded.
Okay. Is it going backwards, like further back, or around the actual end of the? It does. You know what? It does.
It does go a little further back from the existing parking area, kind of along the boundary with Union Villa.
Yeah.
I can add a quick question as well.
Of course.
So, I mean, looking at the other project with Town Hall for an example, we looked at around a 15% increase, where this was significantly higher. Was there any particular items in general, just for curiosity's sake, that that really put this one at almost 50, was it 54%-ish increase? And I guess the second part of my question would be, were the original plans changed, and do we need to present those plans to the public to see the changes in the plans? And do those changes allow for additional growth on that site? I know there was some space in the original plans that kind of allowed for additional projects to be done, maybe down the road, that kind of thing. If the plans were changed, do we still have that allowable space for open green space? And again, I support this. I think, again, I was just at a Four Kicks last week, and the place was packed with pickleball. I was actually quite surprised. So I just want to preface that with saying I do support this. I think it's a good idea to get as much green open space we can for outdoor activities. But I was just curious as to those 3 points.
I would say I'll take the first part, Stephanie, and then I'd love for you to add the color. My understanding is that on November 30th, 2020, when we had $320,000 estimated, if you take when that application process started, it would put you back in April, largely, of 2020, and probably before that when all of this happened. And I think that the initial cost estimates just fundamentally could not have kept up with the dramatic escalation in fundamental product costs, as well as the contractor efforts to do this. So my gut tells me, Tim, that as with any budget, the budget itself might have been wrong, not the actual outcome. I think the 573 is probably much more accurate, and somewhere in between the two numbers, I think, is where the bid came in. But I do believe, to your other point, that the spirit and intent of the 6 courts is here. So we're working to get the 6 courts. Previously, it was 4 and add 2 potentially. And Stephanie, do you want to talk a little bit more to add color about the preservation of the green space and the fields and so on and so forth?
Yeah, the pickleball courts will be running vertical to the tennis courts along the northern border, and the rest of the area will remain the green space. I think it's used for t-ball. The little ball field there will remain, and yes, in the future, that could be rehabilitated to some other open space use there to enhance the park.
I have a question. Is the town making any revenue from this? Like, is there a fee or parking fee or anything for use of the pickleball courts, or is it all free?
Through the recreation department, there is a fee for use of the courts. And that's a good question that was asked during the process originally, when the funding for the design was being contemplated. So right now it covers the cost of nets and balls.
Is there an estimate on how much it's going to cost the town to maintain the courts?
There's no current estimate. The town currently maintains the tennis courts that are there in the field. So in terms of incremental increase, I wouldn't expect it to be too dramatic, since you're already sending employees and personnel there to do the majority of the work. It would probably, if I remember correctly, the 2 tennis size courts probably equal roughly 3 to maybe 4 pickleball court square area. So I don't think it would be a dramatic escalation fundamentally of the cost to maintain that area, as we already send town personnel there to do so now.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Any other questions? Any other points?
Motion to recommend to Pedro.
Second.
Robert got there. Let's see. Where's my list? DiNapoli.
Napoli, yes.
DiNardo.
DiNardo, yes.
Diaz.
Diaz, yes.
DePietro.
Pedro, yes.
Jenkins.
Jenkins, yes.
Lamb.
Lamb, yes.
Bamosi.
Vamosi's yes.
And I am a yes. 18 is a recommend. 19. To see if the town will vote, sorry. CPA funding Southeastern Cemetery fence restoration. To see if the town will vote in accordance with the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee to appropriate the sum of $105,500 from Community Preservation Fund annual revenues for the purpose of completing the restoration and reconstruction of Southeastern Cemetery's historic iron fence or take any action relative thereto. Is this the fence that's right across the street from the college?
Yes, right across the street from Stonehill. Yep.
Got it.
At the
Okay.
cemetery.
Thank you. Any other questions on this one? This one's, I think, pretty cut and dry.
Motion to recommend DePietro.
Do I have a second?
Second by Jenkins.
Napoli,
DiNapoli, yes.
DiNardo,
DiNardo, yes.
Diaz,
Diaz, yes.
DePietro,
DePietro, yes.
Jenkins,
Jenkins, yes.
Famosi,
Vamosi is yes.
Lamb,
Lamb, yes.
and I am a yes. All right, that's 19. All right, so 20, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, 20, 21, 22 are all placeholders. We should jump directly to 23.
You are absolutely correct.
All right, 23. CPA funding Oaks Ames Memorial Hall construction documents and costs to see if the town will vote in accordance with the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee to appropriate the sum of $507,600 from Community Preservation Fund annual revenues or Community Preservation Funds reserved for historic resources for the purposes of preparing construction documents and cost estimates for Oak Ames Memorial Hall for completing the interior infrastructure and finishes, restoration, elevator and kitchen, structural repairs, and the site work, including an expanding parking lot and restoration of the grand staircase from Barrow Street to the hall. Tom, feel free to color away.
Certainly, I'll start, and Greg, if you want to get warmed up to come in relief, you have just a wealth of historical information. In short, this is the preamble to a very large project, probably the largest project that will come before the CPC next year. So this is yet the next step in the phase of fundamentally enabling the Oaks Ames Memorial Hall to have the renovations, the restoration, get it up to compliance, an elevator, for example, such that it can be used by all the residents in our community in terms of accessibility. It would involve moving the kitchen, site work, and also explore expanded parking lot, and also the restoration of the grand staircase from the front entrance, Barrow Street. This is estimated at, or is at $507,600. It again is part of the next phase that was a 2015 CPA funded comprehensive needs assessment for this incredibly important historical structure in Easton. For historical context, since 1995, Easton has appropriated just over $1.1 million worth of support for the hall, $265,000 before the adoption of the CPA, $847,000 since the adoption of the CPA. You know, the goal for this, as Greg and I have had a lot of conversations with the hall and a lot of stakeholders that are involved, whether it's the town, so on and so forth, is really to try to make sure that when we do complete the project and come before you all next year as well, that this become before the residents of the town as well, that this would be enabled to preserve this gem, increase accessibility for the next generation of residents in Easton. There's just a tremendous amount of work and effort that has gone on in that entire area. I think Greg alluded to it earlier, beginning with the library, Queesit House, the Queesit Gardens. This is yet the fourth piece, I guess, along that in order. Greg, do you mind adding some additional color from all of your efforts over the years on this?
Sure, I will keep it brief, but you know, many of us for years have wanted, obviously we have to support the hall, we can't let it fall. Think back, it started with we have these wonderful architectural gems in town, but boy, are they expensive to maintain. The Unitarian Church, the library, right up the street. Now it's time for the hall. And we did a master plan. We funded a master plan through CPA back in 2014. At the time, we were thinking the cost would be 4 to 6 million. Now we're probably looking, almost double that. So the thought is the folks that can work, specialized artisans that can work on these type of buildings are dwindling. They're not getting any younger, and the prices certainly aren't getting any cheaper. So sort of an omnibus package to get the whole thing done, and at the same time to work on the site, not only to restore everything out front, but to create a parking lot in the back that will help unify the campus with the library and make the building, I know Fred Ames hates when I say this, but to make it a little less of a white elephant. It's sort of been like, it was created originally to be a community hall, and that was rejected by folks in Southeastern 120 years ago. And if we're going to put this substantial amount of money into it, time to really position it to be a facility that can benefit from accessibility and parking, so that it can compete with in the sector that it's trying to place itself.
So in essence, to Greg's point, not only is this project designed to preserve the asset, but also increase utilization, so that it can hold larger events, it can hold more frequent events, it can do different types of community programming, support a community arts center. I don't know if you've all had the good fortune to be in there in the dog days of August. It's a special treat. And the installation of HVAC, the removal of knob and tube electrical, and all the things that come with it, including the elevator for accessibility to the second floor. It's truly designed to enable the next generation to use this to a much larger degree than it's currently being used, and to help support the organization to be very much self-sustaining organization, generating the income and revenues that will enable them to handle the ongoing repairs and maintenance needs, programming needs, and capital needs as they go through time. So it's really, to Greg's point, getting it done in an omnibus way to get them to a great point where they can move forward with it themselves and take that building and all the programs that go with it to the next level.
Who manages that building now? So I'm all for it. I think it's a great idea to get them to that point. Are you confident that if you get them up to standards that we require, they're not going to flush that at some point in the future? I don't mean to be harsh, right? I just want to make sure that if we're going to spend the money to get the idea of the building to be financially self-sustaining, that we're not going to manage it back into a rut.
That's a fair question, Brian. So it's currently managed by Fred Ames. Fred has been a steward of that building for quite some time. I don't know the exact time. And he does it in conjunction with the board of directors. They do have a website so that you can learn about them. They do have planning in terms of programming that they are seeking to do in the future. And they do have a solid board to help guide the overall decision. So it's not just one person, but Fred is, I guess you'd call him the executive director. Stephanie Craig, I believe, is the official title. I'm not sure. But that's a fair question, Brian, and that's a similar concern that the CPC has as well. And we are working with that team of the board to help us understand what they have for a long-term plan as well. So I think that's a very fair question. And we have a similar thought process, and they've been working real hard, as you can see, by seeking these applications. They actually are requesting these applications for comprehensive needs assessments, and they have worked as great partners with both us as a CPC and the town to be very communicative about what we are trying to accomplish and the long-term goals we all hold in common.
Thank you.
Greg had mentioned a 2014 plan that was done for that site. So was a needs assessment not done in conjunction with that plan?
I think it's the same. The 2014 planning kicked off what was ultimately delivered in 2015 as the needs assessment. So I think it's the same thing. It's just started in one year and finished in the next.
Yes, you're correct.
Part of that.
Are these just construction documents, design, needs assessment? Is this just construction documents, 500,000?
Yep, so this would be funding the construction design documents that would be necessary to support all of those items. It includes, as we mentioned, approximately 20% of that is for exterior parking design layout. So all of the design and effort that goes into Greg's point, historical building of this age is pretty material and serious. Greg, this is far more your area than mine, but can you add some color to the price versus what we're getting for it?
Well, I would say this, typically architectural fees, architectural engineering fees will run anywhere from 5 to 15% for a project. I think if you ballparked a budget for the structure alone on this, we're probably looking in the ballpark of $8 million. And so the fee of 500,000 is on the low end from a percentage standpoint. In part because a lot of the work has been done through the needs assessment and the master plan that we funded back in 14. And you're right, we're done in 15. And, it's such a specialized building between the masonry and trying to determine how to handle the microenvironments that are causing deterioration of the sandstone, the brownstone, trying to, we're gonna have to go through and pull out all the old knob and tube wiring and replace that with modern wiring. The HVAC, as Tom discussed, insertion of an elevator is not very easy in a building like this. And it's just, it really is, you think of it, we're blessed to have the largest collection of Richardson buildings in the world. And I'm glad that we're looking to put a parking lot there to help with the programming. But even if we weren't, or if we didn't have the real estate to make that happen, we still, granted I'm biased on the historical end, but I think it's our responsibility to be stewards and to take care of this building. We're very lucky as a town for all the open space, parks, landscaping, and structures that were given to us by the Ameses. And it would be, I don't think it would reflect well on the town if we let the building literally collapse. And given that it's expensive construction, but it should be set up for another 120 years once we take care of it. So,
Gregory, are you familiar with the architects? Have they done work in the town before on any of these other old buildings?
Yeah, I'm sorry, there was a little broken up. I think you asked about the qualifications of the architect. And yes, this firm has worked actually on this building for the last, and Stephanie, you can help, maybe 5, 6, 7 years. They worked on the town hall. They specialize in preservation and structures of this nature. And in fact, recently, for an emergency situation that's existing in there, that Tom and I and some others met with their team, and it's all folks that specialize in historic one-of-a-kind structures like this. And it's supply and demand, right? There's not many people that can work on these. I mean, it's incredible. It's fascinating for someone like myself with an architectural background to go in and look at the underbelly of this building. But it's a blessing and a curse because there's just not a huge labor pool to pull from, folks that are qualified to take care of this.
Greg, I have a friend that actually was supposed to get married there and they canceled the wedding on her because of some more structural damage they found. Do you know if that's going to significantly increase the cost of repair of this project?
No, there was some anticipated cost for that. I think it probably will, it may add a little bit to the cost, but significantly, maybe overall, maybe 5 or 10%. But we're early enough in the process that choices, if need be, choices could be made to help offset some of that cost.
And just because it's on the warrant, but Kelly, if the 3 articles we didn't cover, you alluded to one of them that we will be addressing as a CPC tomorrow night. It is that fact that there has been an emergency issue identified at the hall. And so to Greg's point, we're hoping that we do get some benefit in terms of the repairs this year may mitigate some of the expense asked next year. but we won't be waiting until next year. We don't anticipate waiting until next year to put this before the voters to approve in terms of the emergency repair that you alluded to that caused the cancellation of events, most likely through the summer. Tim, I think you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I got a quick question for you as well in regards to the parking. With the parking, the planning costs that are quoted here, I know there's, I believe there's another article related to land in relation to that. If one, I guess it's more a procedural question. If the one article passes or one article fails, does it automatically negate the other article, or do we have to make adjustments to say we vote in the planning or recommend and it gets voted in the planning contract? If the land doesn't pass per se, would we have to start the process over again with the planning, or is there some kind of language in that that happen? Is that making sense what I'm asking?
Yep, it does. And Michael, if you want to get ready, because I think you also were on to potentially opine for Article 24, I think it is. But in short, Tim, no, neither of these articles are about actually doing the work. Both of these articles are actually about preparing for what's to come next year and providing flexibility and for putting the necessary steps in place now, such that when we get to the project next year, we will not have to incur any unnecessary and arduous delays associated with the options. And what I mean by that is and Michael, I'm going to do as good a job as I can, but I'll give you an example. When you get to Article 24, it speaks to leveraging town land, which exists behind Oaks Ames Memorial Hall, in a very similar way that the library project was leveraged, such that there was town land that was made available for the benefit of the community and for a ancillary project. In our case, it would be the Oaks Ames Memorial Hall. And when you go through there are certain mechanisms predefined legislatively to do that. One of them requires you to go before the state to get their approval, and that can take upwards of 16, 18, 20 months. And so if we get to next year's town hall meeting where we want to do the larger Oaks Ames Memorial Hall, and the residents so choose to support our recommendations at that point in time, we will not have to wait for the town land, for lack of a simple way to say it, becoming available for this Oaks Ames Memorial Hall for parking. It's a process that was done again before. It's very similar to the library. And if for whatever reason, again, to Greg's point, I just can't imagine the residents of the town would not support the planning of this. That planning, even externally for the parking lot, would be money well spent while we have everybody there. I think it gets back to the question that was asked appropriately by Brian. We know that the best use of the facility requires a certain amount of people to be able to be in the building itself, to have access to the building. If you are holding a wedding where you held the food and the guests and you wanted everything at this campus, it's governed by the parking that's available to you. And so we, for example, in that situation may lose out on several types of weddings, let alone that people might not want to get married in the heat of August, but they can only have parking for 30 cars in the immediate area, maybe 14 spots on site. So we think it's prudent that if we, as a CPC, we're going to be potentially recommending in the future a project to what Greg spoke about in the $8 million area, that if you quickly do an ROI analysis on the level of revenue, you need to increase it, to Brian's point, then you fundamentally need to increase flow through of patrons. And to do so, you need to make sure they have the ability to get in and get out. That's probably the finance guy in me speaking right there, but I fundamentally have pointed out that to me, if you do not, from a base level, increase the capacity, and I guess I call it table turn, which means how many people you can get in and out, and therefore generate revenue, it's a large spend to keep it at its current utilization rate.
Yeah, I mean, I just did
lengthy?
No, I just did some quick math on that. I mean, if you're renting it for $3,000 a week, a weekend day, you got about 104 weekend days in a year, so it's 300,000 in revenue, and that's a 25-year return on that investment. That's, just if you're getting out on the weekends. To me, it's very much worthwhile.
So I'm with you on that, and I would layer in the subjective. I think Greg said it best. There's probably a good reason why all of our property values have been increasing at a slightly elevated rate than sister communities around us. And I think that's because Easton has a very unique, inimitable offering to its residents that is highly attractive. And I think buildings like this are, without question, flag bearers of that standard. So I think that there's a soft benefit, Brian, in terms of value creation that might not necessarily be calculable, but I absolutely agree with your hard numbers. And I kind of did the same on back of napkins as well.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, I said it earlier. I'm a newer member of the community. I've been here for a little over 2 years now. So we are certainly drawn to those buildings, and the businessman in me sees the opportunity for us to take advantage of that and raise some money.
Well said. Kelly, good to see that you're getting help and support in the background, by the way.
They were
Any other
supposed to
questions for
add
anybody?
like 20 minutes ago, but they're taking advantage of the fact that I'm in a meeting.
Anyone else?
Motion
Kelly,
to recommend to Petra.
You say, Kelly, if your kids have questions, feel free to bring them in as well. We have a motion to
Seconded.
recommend. DiNardo,
Seconded by DiNardo. Yep.
thank you, sir. DiNapoli.
Napoli, yes.
DiNardo.
DiNardo, yes.
Diaz.
Yes.
Petro.
Petra, yes.
Jenkins.
Jeff?
Lamb.
Ram, yes.
Famosi.
Most yes.
I am a yes. Right, 24. We sort of preambled 24 a little bit in that it's essentially directly related to 23. It is the actual authorization to the select board to lease some land for parking. Where's the explanation? Because this one's pretty big. Previous studies have identified the lack of on-site parking. In fact, Tom just did, as a key inhibitor to the hall's capacity for public use. In order for the restoration of Oaks Ames Memorial Hall to fully activate the capacity of the hall to host functions and offer community programming, additional parking is essential. This article will allow the town to lease land to the hall for the purposes of constructing a modern, accessible parking area to support the programming at the hall, et cetera, et cetera. The only question I have, these parcels, are these directly behind the hall in that upper slope right above where the tree line is at the library, just pushing back?
Yep.
Yes.
Like 9 people nodding. Okay.
Yep.
That was it for me. Does anyone else have any other questions?
Just want to make sure that if we do build a parking lot up there, that they make sure that it drains properly, because you don't want all that water coming down the hill into this nice refurbished hallway.
You say you're new in town, but you already know how swampy this town is. So
Yeah, no, I got a basement.
yeah. You have a
So,
pallet.
Brian, to your point, so that you know the thoughtfulness, I give credit to the designs that have been done. They already exist in terms of different options. It is designed to create accessibility to all campuses so that you can, regardless of accessibility capability, you are able to go from campus to campus. So there'll be nice, long, appropriately sloped walkways. And we have already held a listening session where we reached out to the residents in the area, just so that we could get feedback, like you brought up, considerations that when we get them now, before we go through the planning phase, we'll have the opportunity to give some due consideration and hopefully make this a win-win for all the stakeholders involved.
How many spots is the parking going to add?
So to be determined based upon the design. So they'll have to go through the drilling. They'll have to understand where the ledge is. But I think the high-end estimates are 68, and there are several staggered variants down below. And it just depends upon what you can actually do with the land back there after they do their design and consultation and understand where the ledge situation is at. Seems to be the biggest issue.
Is it possible to do a parking structure there, or does it have to be just like flat parking?
I think we're looking at flat parking. I think a structure would probably get into some of the perhaps architectural components. I'm not sure what that might look like. I don't think you can go down in terms of the ground. But I think right now, all of the designs are flat parking lot, keeping in, I guess, landscaping aesthetics that connect into the library, Queesit Gardens, and onto the Queesit House, and over to Unity Church, like Greg spoke about.
Any other questions?
Motion to recommend to Petra.
Do I have a second?
Second to Napoli.
She's back. She found that mute button. Here we go. DiNapoli,
To Napoli, yes.
DiNardo,
Bernardo, yes.
Diaz,
Yes.
Petro,
Petra, yes.
Jenkins,
Thinking yes.
Lamb,
Ma'am, yes.
Ramosi,
Vamosi's, yes.
and I am a yes. With that, I think that's, I'm sorry, did someone have something?
I just wanted to say, if I could, before I jumped off, Patrick, first of all, thank you again for the time tonight. I'm not leaving because I have an aversion to zoning amendments at all. Those are fun, and Greg does a great job. So Greg, nothing personal. But I do just want to thank you all again for the time to go through these articles and learn about the CPA. And also thank you all for your service. I haven't necessarily met all of you in person, but I appreciate you, like us, donate generously your time. And it was great to be on FinCom after a long hiatus.
Good to see you, Tom. Thanks for coming in.
Stay well,
Yeah,
everybody.
we feel the same. So thank you for what you do.
Bye, team.
All right. Tom's gone. Now we can make fun of him. All right. So 25 to 34. Time for the Greg Strange show, right? Michael, you said you were going to stick around until after 24? Was there anything else you needed, or do you and Wendy can probably? I assume you can depart. I don't want to tell you you have to, but it's up to you.
Yeah, I think we're good. So I may hang for a little bit, but I'll probably jump off shortly.
Hey, listen, I know how compelling we are, so stick around if you want to. With
I'm gonna
that,
sign off. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
hi, Wendy. Thank you.
Bye.
Hi, Wendy.
So with that, we will turn it over to our other illustrious guest star here, which is Greg Strange, the man, the myth, the legend himself from the zoning board. Greg, I'm gonna same process, right? I'm gonna go through a lot of these are, I think, relatively straightforward, but I'll read them and then we'll kick it to you for any additional color or comments you have, and then Michael will force us to motion. Article, what are we on? 25, zoning amendments. Section 235 definition, Appendix A1, traditional zoning district, table of use regulations, and Appendix A2, special zoning districts, table of use regulations. Explanation. This amendment adds self-storage as a use by special permit in the designated business districts and adds a definition for self-storage. Greg, any color
Couldn't
to
have
add?
said it any better myself. Yeah,
Probably
simply
wrote-
we're looking to add, sometimes things are so obvious, we didn't have self-storage in there. Think of it, we've added almost 1,000 apartments in the last decade in Easton, and the demand is there. And with the continuing collapse of bricks and mortar, but yet given our limited commercial zoning areas, we're looking to give developers and property owners more creative ways to create non-residential properties to help out with our business tax base. And the thought was self-storage, done as a special permit so that we're able to control it. There's a growing trend. There's a building going up right now, for example, in Brookline. It's self-storage right downtown, but you wouldn't know it. It's made to look like a building. So that's why we structure it as a special permit, so we can make sure they put something aesthetically pleasing to the benefit of Easton.
And so this just literally adds the option for the permit.
Exactly, it puts it in the use tables and gives it a definition. Just something that was kind of a glaring hole in the bylaw.
Okay.
Have we missed out on any opportunities in the past because this was not available?
No, because we've had a few people that have been interested, but and we said we could move forward with this, but they were they went other ways or didn't purchase the property. But I can see on the horizon this being more and more in demand, so that's why Stephanie and I wanted to tackle it.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Any other questions on this one?
That's a quick question. We don't have any self-storage places in now?
There's one, Stephanie, there's one up on 138 on the Rainham side,
Yeah, yes.
which
I think
predates
that's-
my time on the board of 17 years. So I'm not sure how it got there.
Yeah, it may have been a variance, but I think that's the only one.
Yeah, I think the only one that's close is the one that's right over the line in Stoughton.
Oh, it's, okay, so there may be another one. So at either end of 138 then.
Yeah,
it's
I'm just
not- it's
looking at
not-
that.
it's not in Easton.
I drive by there every day to take my kids and myself to work. So I was just looking at it on the map. It's in Stoughton, but it's definitely like teetering on the line.
Motion to recommend DePietro.
There he is. Do I have a second?
Second by Jenkins.
Thank you. DiNapoli,
DiNapoli, yes.
DiNardo,
DiNardo, yes.
Diaz,
Yes, yes.
DePietro,
DePietro, yes.
Jenkins,
Jenkins, yes.
Lamb,
Lamb, yes.
Bamosi,
Most is yes.
and I am a yes. 26, zoning amendment, section 235-51, Queesit Smart Growth Overlay District, the QSGOD. Nice. It's see the town of Easton will vote pursuant to MGL Chapter 48 to amend sections of the zoning bylaw of the town of Easton adopted at town meeting March 27th, 1973, and amended through May 17, 2021 as printed in the supplement titled Zoning Amendments, section 235. This amendment adds outside dining as an allowed use in the Queesit Smart Growth Overlay District subzones B and C.
So
Any-
the QSOD, think of that, that's basically Queesit Commons. So think of all the development behind Stone Forge, Doug King's development back there, which was an overlay district approved back in 2008. There's 3 sub-districts, and we're looking just to allow, these things have obviously changed for the restaurant industry, and with, looking outdoor dining has become more and more important. And with a new restaurant about to join us there, we thought this was a good adjustment. And the only reason there's 3 districts, A, B, and C, and sub-district A is what is known as the island. It's the luxury condos that Mr. King put up maybe 3 years ago. So there's no commercial space out there for a restaurant. So that's the only reason that that's not allowed.
Where's their new restaurant going in?
It's going to be
Subsections,
on
subzone B or
Roosevelt
C.
Drive as you enter in. Across from Stone.
Oh, yeah, okay. Any other questions for Mr. Strange?
I'm assuming these plots don't affect any of the traffic patterns and so on and so forth.
Correct.
And just for clarification, this zoning is for behind Stone Forge Road, correct?
Yes, it's basically everything that you see behind Stone Forge and behind CVS. There's just, not all of it has been developed yet. There's there's 3 buildings there currently. There's a master plan, like I said, done in 2008, and there's upwards of 4 more buildings to go up there under current plans.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any chance a hotel is going to be back there?
We actually just about had one in place right before COVID. It fell apart for some corporate reasons, and as the gentleman in his firm were looking to deal with another firm or another brand, COVID hit. So I think, but given the proximity to Stonehill, we're always pushing for that, and hopefully when we get when the industry shakes out after COVID, we will have one there. There's certainly demand for it.
Yeah, that'd be great for taxes too.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Anyone else for 20 or 26? 26.
Motion to recommend DePietro.
Do I have a second?
Second, DiNapoli.
Right. DiNapoli,
DiNapoli, yes.
DiNardo,
DiNardo, yes.
Diaz,
Yes, yes.
Petro,
DePietro, yes.
Jenkins,
Jenkins, yes.
Lamb,
Lamb, yes.
Mosi.
Most is yes.
I am a yes. 26 is a recommend. All right, 27. Zoning Amendment Appendix A1, Traditional Zoning District, Table of Use Regulations, and Appendix A2, Special Zoning Districts, Table of Use Regulations, 235.14. Explanation, this is a housekeeping item that corrects the Table of Use Regulations to be consistent with the text of the zoning bylaw, section 235.14.
Motion to recommend DePietro.
Before he says that, my guess,
Housekeeping item.
A housekeeping item.
as the zoning amendments piece, I just want to make sure Hey, it's 9:30. I get you. But just in case anybody seeing nothing, what'd you say, Mike?
A motion to recommend.
Uh-huh.
DePietro.
We have a second.
Second,
Yes,
DiNapoli?
second.
Yeah, she beat you. DiNapoli?
DiNapoli, yes.
DiNardo?
DiNardo, yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
DePietro?
DePietro, yes.
Jenkins?
Jenkins, yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Mosi?
Mostly yes.
I am a yes. 27. 28. Zoning amendment, section 235-37, flexible development. This amendment provides clarity relative to front yard setback requirements for flexible development subdivisions. Currently, the text of said section specifically allows the planning and zoning board the ability to reduce side and rear yard setbacks, but is silent on front yard setbacks. This change states the front yard setbacks in a flexible development shall be at least 25 feet unless specifically allowed otherwise by the planning and zoning board. I think I got it. Does anyone have any questions on it?
I
So-
understand it, but why?
It just wasn't there.
Gregory, can you enlighten us?
Sure. So we've had two flexible developments so far that have been under construction. One is Weber Estates on Bay Road. One is Goodspeed Estates on Center Street. And there are another couple that are proposed. It's a great zoning tool that allows for smaller lots, thus smaller houses, and hopefully smaller affordable housing. And as we've gone through this, flexible, there's not a set lot size. There's not, so given when these are put together, sometimes trying to preserve the natural resources, sometimes trying to present an aesthetic. We've just realized in practice, it would be nice if we had the ability to reduce the side and front setbacks now and then, just because sometimes you start to run out of space on smaller lots. So it's just, once we've had practice of this, like, we should give ourselves this tool. It would be a better product for the town of Easton.
What's the current setback in front?
Current setback for side and rear is 10 feet, and this setback for the front is 25. And we wouldn't be greatly reducing the 25 because you still need to park a car in a driveway. But there are some times that, given we talked about earlier, there's wetlands everywhere in town, buffer zones. It'd be nice if, we could get it, sometimes need it to be maybe 20 feet or so.
Does this unduly affect any current homeowners that aren't in a flexible development subdivision?
No,
Okay.
it doesn't, no.
Any other questions on, what are we on? 28.
28.
Motion to recommend.
recommend.
No, I think that's DiNardo. I think we're giving to him.
Second,
I've been there
DePietro.
for hours.
DePietro got the second. Where are we? DiNapoli,
DiNapoli, yes.
DiNardo,
DiNardo, yes.
Diaz,
Yes, yes.
Petro,
DePietro, yes.
Jenkins,
Jenkins,
yes.
Lamb,
Ma'am, yes.
Mosi,
Mostly yes.
and I am a yes. 29, another housekeeping item. I'll go quick. Article 29, a bunch of stuff that are incredibly complex words. This is a housekeeping item to correct the table of use regulations to be consistent with the zoning bylaw text in section 235.39. I don't understand it. I don't know that any of us would understand it, even had you read the zoning amendments, which the blank look on all your faces means you probably did not. No offense, Greg. I didn't understand it. But if anyone has any questions on it, it seems pretty straightforward to me that it's, hey, this table of use regulation has to match. Let's make sure it's consistent.
Is that correct, Greg?
That's correct, Gregory.
And don't feel bad. I do this for a living and I have a blank look on my face.
Yes, the answer is yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie.
Back to
Motion
Mike.
to
I opened with
recommend
a yes on
DePietro.
that.
Second, Jenkins,
There we go. DiNapoli,
DiNapoli, yes.
DiNardo,
DiNardo, yes.
Diaz,
Yes, yes.
Petro,
DePietro, yes.
Jenkins,
Jenkins, yes.
Lamb,
Ma'am, yes.
Famosi,
Mostly yes.
and I am a yes. I'm getting you guys out of here before 10 o'clock. see. Article 30, zoning amendment appendix A2 special zoning districts table of use regulations. Explanation, this is another housekeeping item, eliminating a dimensional standard that would unintentionally render existing properties within the district non-conforming. I do have a question about this. Essentially, the non-conforming aspect, this is just fixing something that if this existing section of the bylaw was left as is, there could be something that would be raised as a non-conforming property. Right.
Correct. This was supposed to have been removed in last year's version, and it just didn't happen. So
okay. Any other
Motion
questions?
to recommend.
Second. Second by Jenkins.
Thank you. DiNapoli.
DiNapoli, yes.
DiNardo.
DiNardo, yes.
Diaz.
Diaz, yes.
Petro.
DePietro, yes.
Jenkins.
Jenkins, yes.
Lamb.
Lamb, yes.
Vamosi.
Is that duty?
I didn't hear you, Tim. You didn't come through.
Mostly yes, sorry.
No problem. And I am a yes. All right. On to 31, zoning amendment, section something, in-law apartments. To see if the town of Easton will vote pursuant to MGL Chapter 48 to amend sections of the zoning bylaw of the town of Easton, adopted at town meeting March 27, 1973, and amended through May 17, 2021, as printed in the supplement. The explanation is this amendment allows in-law apartments to have a front entrance by eliminating the requirement that a new entrance to an in-law apartment must be located on the side or rear of the building. Any questions on this one?
I do have a question. Can they have it on all three sides? Front, rear, back?
yes, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Isn't it by law, Gregory, they have to have two means of
Yeah,
access?
you need two anyway, so chances are you'd have one out back.
All right.
What's the big deal with it? I don't understand. With that-
I'm sorry, you cut out.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Robert. You're very quiet.
Sorry, I don't understand what the architectural issue is with this. You have to have two means of egress. I don't understand.
I think it,
Right, just when we originally did this by right a few years ago, we wanted to make sure that the house still looked like a house. It was, and it didn't start to look like a multifamily. We didn't want to ruin the fabric of an existing single-family neighborhood. But just through practice, and we've realized as long as the second entrance looks subordinate, by that it's set back, it's hidden, it's put under a porch, that can still work. So we're trying to just provide more options to the citizens in town that want to do in-law apartments, which is becoming more and more common.
Make the motion to accept the article.
do I have a second?
Second, DiNapoli.
We'll see what Stacy comes back with on that one. DiNapoli.
DiNapoli, yes.
DiNardo.
DiNardo, yes.
Diaz.
Diaz, yes.
Petro.
DePietro, yes.
Where am I? Jenkins.
Jenkins, yes.
Lamb.
Lamb, yes.
Vamosi.
Mostly yes.
I am a yes. 31 is recommend. 32. This article would specifically allow solar installations for residential use in the residential district. I wasn't aware this didn't exist already, so this one was curious to me. Is this just essentially, my guess, the amendment itself is that this district now can allow you to have roof-based solar, or is it even that specific? Is it just solar in general?
I was on the IR for a bad ski accident when this happened, so I'll let Stephanie take this one.
So one of the members of the planning board wanted to ensure, it comes from two things, wanted to ensure and kind of encourage people to adopt solar photovoltaic installations for their residential use. It is allowed, you cannot zone against it. This just specifically states that it's allowed for residential use, but what it also does is it states that installations over 25 kilowatts, so up to 25 kilowatts would be considered personal residential use. Anything over that would be considered commercial, and you'd need to follow the bylaw for a commercial installation if someone was proposing a commercial installation on their property.
Got it.
What if you have a large house though? It's your residential home. It just happens to be large. That seems like a nuisance or a restriction on the homeowner.
Up to 20, my understanding is up to 25 kilowatts would be sufficient for a residential home.
It depends on the size of the home. And two, if you have multiple cars that you're trying to charge, that would also increase your usage.
Would this be the size of the cells themselves? Like essentially the power capacity of the cells is what my thought was. I might be wrong.
Yeah, no, we're looking at Tesla solar roofs right now, and they're recommending a 28.8 roof for the size of our house. So that's why it seems like it's a pretty low number.
Would this also affect pre-existing installations?
No. No, as with any zoning change, if there were one that were larger, it would be a pre-existing non-conforming. So it wouldn't be a zoning violation.
What if they had to replace it?
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that question.
So Stephanie, maybe this is the ask. Is the existing bylaw the 20? I'm going to screw it up. The 25 megawatts. Is that the existing bylaw as is on the books now?
What's on the books is
It'd be a small
the
fusion
requirements, what the standards are for solar photovoltaic installations in the ground-mounted solar photovoltaic overlay districts.
Got it.
Where was the number for the 25 kilowatts? Was that an evidence-based number, or I'm still confused? I agree with Kelly on that. I'm a little bit confused as to where that number came from and how it's applicable.
I'm sorry. It was posited by one of the board members who has an engineering background and indicated that this was a suitable number for a residential use.
Is this zoning change creating this limit? I.e., if this were not passed, what would the limit be?
Yeah, and it doesn't say anything about the limit in the actual text.
Yeah, I think the limit's already there.
So really how it reads is solar photovoltaic installation size for primary use. So accessory uses, these are allowed uses in the business industrial districts. Any use authorized as a principal use by special permit may be authorized. It does, I mean,
sounds like it sets the limit at 25. Am I just reading that incorrectly?
I'm sorry, Robert, you were really breaking up. I can not understand you.
I'm sorry, my mic has been acting up. It sounds like this sets the limit.
Yes. I mean, you can see that in the table of uses where it says solar photovoltaic installations size for principal use up to 25 kilowatts.
Yeah, I find that number to be extremely low. I know a lot of residential systems, and a lot of it depends on your azimuth, and I mean, there's a lot of things that go into this. So I mean, one house could be running at 25 and under, and then the house next door to it, just because of its position to the southwest, could greatly increase its capacity. So I'm a little bit confused as to where that number came from. If there was any, like I said, any evidence-based data to support why that number is being proposed, I'd be more apt to recommend. But I think, unfortunately, at this point, I'd probably err on the side of caution and not recommend.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with Tim. I feel like there needs to be more information, maybe from the person that made the recommendation.
So question on a process sort of question here. Is that recommendation from our Easton zoning board, or is that we're proposing that we use like state language or something like that?
This was proposed from a member of the board, of the Easton Planning Board.
Okay. Would we be able to change that if we got it too late? This seems like the sort of thing where we made a good faith best guess, and we
Right.
all support having
Yeah,
solar. We just have the wrong number, is what
You know,
what it
if I
feels
may,
like.
I normally don't stay quiet on planning issues, but like I said, this came up at the last meeting, which I wasn't at due to surgery. And yeah, to your point, Mike, maybe it was a good effort. This could be, at this point, we won't have the time to go back and change it. It could be changed on the floor of town meeting, or it could just not pass at town meeting. Or I guess the third option would be, well, if it passes, folks could go through a variance, but you don't like to do things with a variance. And in Kelly's house, I'm a little familiar with the size of that. And, if they're looking at 28, and a half, then yeah, then this must be small. And I apologize, I didn't really have time to research this one. I don't want to just put it on one of my members, but if it's not going to try that again. If it's not going to pass the sniff test, then perhaps we can do some homework and try to amend it on the floor of town meeting, or maybe it's maybe it just doesn't pass and we have to hold off to another year. Don't want to rush anything that doesn't seem to work.
So to
Right.
that point,
and really, it was not intended to restrict personal usage.
right? But
So
the
that number
unintended
is
consequence.
low based on your experience.
So then why,
I agree. I don't think we want to see commercial installations pop up in everybody's backyard trying to take up with it. But I do think that when we look
You're
at
not, but on the other hand, you're not encouraging personal residential use if what you're
Right.
saying is the wattage is the
yeah,
kilowattage.
right. I think there's a lot of factors that go into the kilowatt per hour calculations, and house size being one of them, but also just position of the house, tree coverage. There's a lot of things that go into those factors when people look into solar. So I think that number would have to be reviewed before I would move forward.
So the options we have in front of us is we can vote on it if if the predominant number of people do not recommend it. Fine. We can table it for additional conversation to the next meeting. The only thing is, I don't know, based on what you guys are saying now, if that, other than you guys making an amendment on the floor, which you could either way, we have to vote on the merits of obviously this particular article. So I don't know that we could, even if we had someone come back and discuss further, if that would add any additional, other than like, I swear I will make an amendment on the floor. Like even then, it wouldn't change much.
Yeah, I was thinking something, I don't know, Michael is no longer on the call, and something I would run by the town administrator and town council. I mean, maybe it's worth pulling this. I know the select board did vote to recommend, and Greg, please speak up. Maybe it gets pulled for additional research and analysis by the board. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I feel. I feel, frankly, I feel a little embarrassed. I've been involved in this a long time, and I try to do a good job deferring sometimes. And health issues came up, and I certainly don't mean, I'm not putting this on Stephanie at all.
How dare you go skiing, Greg?
Helping it. Well, that won't happen again. But
Well, I think
helping a member. But this, I am loath to not be able to answer a question in a public forum on this. So. I think we should pull it and do a better job with it, next year, frankly. So.
Yeah, so let's table it for now. Then let's not take a vote on it, just in case. Like if we again, I also to Stephanie's point before that I thought was actually apt is you obviously don't want to put any sort of chilling effect on the fact that people want to get solar. Like yay solar, all for it myself. So let's skip 32. If it gets pulled or not, we do obviously have this second meeting, so that whatever the initial discussion we had here, which kudos to Kelly for bringing it up, that conversation now obviously brings out a different point of it. Let's look at it again on the 27th if it's still there, if it's something we can continue on with. If not, who knows? Michael Blanchard might be able to come in and say, here's the real consideration you should have, et cetera, et cetera. We'll worry about it then. But see, look at that, FinCom. making moves.
Go team.
I will actually be gone the 27th because I'm going to the Dominican Republic.
Pass it
Well,
right
we're
without
going to keep it at 25 then.
No solar for you.
Just go on, push it through. Push it through. No, that's fine because obviously it very well might
I
not
think
come up.
Tim has my back, so he'll be
I think,
there.
yeah, I think
I'll carry the solar torch.
the shocking fact that Tim knows essentially everything about everything continues to amaze on every meeting. So just kudos to everybody for that one. So let's jump 32 to 33. Another zoning amendment. This one, the explanation, housekeeping article to provide clarity on allowed accessory structures in the residential district. Greg, do you want to give a quick snapshot on that one?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd quite call it house cleaning, but there's more and more a trend on, let me say, there's been several times where residents have been concerned where neighbors want to put up large industrial type buildings for, for example, taking care of their cars, having a hobby of rebuilding cars, which is nothing wrong with that. But sometimes these buildings have been proposed to be 2 or 3 times the size of their house. And then because of maybe wetlands or because of the shape of their lot, they end up almost in the front yard. And, folks obviously in, subdivisions area, people are concerned with that. Again, we are a residential tax base. So we tried to, basically this talks about the structure needs to be accessory to the building. I'm sorry, to the structure, to the house. So maybe it means it's set back, or it needs to, think of, it could still be larger, but think of old barns back in the day, the big house, outhouse, back house barn, where the barn was set back a little bit from the house. It wasn't the first thing that you saw. So it's just trying to protect folks' investments in their residential properties.
Questions, comments on, what the hell number are we on? 33.
Motion to recommend.
Do I have a second?
Second to Pedro.
Back to my list. DiNapoli.
DiNapoli, yes.
DiNardo.
DiNardo, yes.
Diaz.
Yes.
DePietro.
Pedro, yes.
Jenkins.
Jenkins, yes.
Lamb.
Lamb, yes.
Vamosi.
Vamosi, yes.
And I am a yes. Last one, everybody. 34. Amendment Appendix A2 Special Zoning Districts Table of Use Regulations. This amendment is a housekeeping item that corrects the ratio of office, retail, or restaurant uses to residential use for a mixed-use development in the Queesit Commercial District to be consistent with the earlier reference in the Code of 1.3.
Absolutely housekeeping on this one.
Am I wrong? This was just like a mismatch in the actual
Exactly. This was just we wrote this bylaw, we revised this bylaw last year, and a couple of weeks ago we're reading it. Oh, how'd this thing slip in here?
Motion to recommend to Pedro.
I like it. I like the approach.
It's cut you right off, Greg.
Thanks. It's all good. I started at 4 o'clock this morning. Cut me off.
Greg's tired. Let's get Greg home. Second. Do we have a second?
Second DiNapoli.
DiNapoli.
DiNapoli, yes.
DiNardo.
DiNardo, yes.
Diaz.
Yes.
DePietro.
Pedro, yes.
Jenkins,
Jenkins.
yes.
Lamb.
Lamb, yes.
Vamosi.
Vamosi, yes.
And I am a yes. Those are the articles, everybody. We still have 4, 5, 7, 8, 20, 21, 22, and 32 to go through on our next meeting. But with that, we are done with the vast majority of them. I appreciate you guys taking the time and the effort. Stephanie, Greg, God bless you for sticking through the whole thing and my incredibly awful, boring jokes halfway through and at all times. You guys can drop off. The only thing we have left is we have meeting minutes to vote on, which will take 10 seconds, and I'm kicking these guys out of here. Thanks again.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you for joining us tonight.
All right, with that, we have 2 meeting minutes before us. October 13th, 2021 and March 10th, 2021. If no one has any changes, edits, updates, etc., we can vote them in batch. Someone can make a motion to accept all the meeting minutes.
Motion to accept all meeting minutes.
Do I have a second?
Seconded by DiNapoli.
Let's go through it, guys, for the last time before we do the goodbye. DiNapoli.
DiNapoli, yes.
DiNardo.
DiNardo, yes.
Diaz.
Yes.
Petro.
Pedro, yes.
Jenkins.
Jenkins, yes.
Lamb.
Yes, Lamb.
Vamosi,
Vamosi, yes.
and I am a yes. With that,
Motion to adjourn.
wait. I'm gonna say, I gotta, it's on the agenda. Sorry, I gotta
Yeah.
ask. Does anyone have anything they wanna very, very, very shamefully and aggressively share with the rest of the committee right now? Or can it wait to the 27th? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Seeing none, Mike,
Motion
what's
to
that?
adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. DiNapoli,
DiNapoli, yes.
Leonardo,
DiNardo, yes.
Diaz,
Yes, yes.
Petro,
Pedro, yes.
Jenkins,
Jenkins, yes.
Lamb,
Sam, yes.
Vamosi,
Vamosi, yes.
and I am a yes. That is it. I got you out of here before 10. I didn't lie.
Well
Thank
done,
you all.
gang. Thanks.
Amazing,
Good
amazing
night.
work. I will see you again soon. Good night, all.
Good night.